leg and knee still bother me a good bit if I stand too long. As some of you don't know, I had a knee replacement a couple of months ago. My second one. Today's we had some long stories. The story from Ezekiel of the Valley of Dry Bones is an interesting one. You're not meant to take that literally, of course. It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for Israel, who have lost everything. They've been taken away in exile, and those that weren't considered important enough or worthy enough to be exiled stayed behind in Jerusalem. And they had been in Babylon now for a long time, and there were very few of them that still remember how they were chosen, how Israel had been chosen by God to be a special people. And as they fell away from that, they lost their specialness, they lost their country, and most of them lost their will. Ezekiel comes as a prophet and says, "You see this valley of dry bones?" Saying, "This is you. You are the dry bones. Your country and your people are dry and dead. But God is going to forgive you. God is going to come down and make you whole again. Give you another chance. Put life back into you. Breathe from the four winds into your body, into these bones that have come together with now sinew and flesh, and will again be Israel. Will again be God's chosen people." And they go back. They're relieved from their exile. They go back home, and they never make it again. They never become a great nation. They're one of the few nations that even got back together again after these two exiles that they've had. They got it together, but they never followed God the way God had intended, the way they were supposed to in their covenant with God. And so they became a so-so group of people for a long time, were overthrown by first the Greeks, and then the Romans, and under Roman occupation we come to the New Testament and to Jesus. And toward the end of Jesus' life in John's Gospel. Now, each Gospel has a whole different story, but they're stories very much like, in many ways, like Ezekiel's. They're stories telling you in a metaphorical language something that's spiritual and not literal. You have to keep making that distinction when we talk about resurrection and life, death and life. Death is something we don't talk about very much. Death is something in our culture we don't even want to mention, or at least we mention it, but a lot of people that don't have a belief in any afterlife think that it is ridiculous. Since the Enlightenment, it all seemed completely absurd that there could be life after death, that there could be resurrection, that the emphasis is not on dying and being prepared and getting ready to die, but the emphasis now is on health, cure. It's on being well. It's on keeping you alive at almost all costs. Don't let me die. Let me live another day, another week, another year. We had an oncologist who, when we were waiting for a reception at a restaurant, that forgot to deal with his reservation in Maui. And all of us that were invited to this reception afterwards were waiting outside in the courtyard, or in the heat, as it were, for a table to be cleared, a long table for everybody. He said, "Don't worry about waiting a few hours or waiting an hour." He says, "Most of my patients would like to have another hour, regardless of how well they felt or how much the cancer could be slowed down with radiation or whatever process." Now, some of us wouldn't want to go through that whole process. And we say, at least when we're feeling well, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to live healthy life, and when it's time for me to die, I'm going to die. I've told my wife, and I've told most of you this, but there's some sailors here today that probably haven't heard it, that when I get too old and sick and stupid to take care of myself, just put me in my rowboat, cast me off. And she said, can't you use the canoe? I really like to keep the rowboat. Well, the rowboat got burned in a fire recently. Not burned up, but quite badly damaged, and it's going to take most of this summer to repair it. Somebody says, oh, they do a good job down at the yard with the fiberglass. And I said, I built this boat. I ought to be able to fix it. It's a composite boat, wooden boat with fiberglass inside and out. And the fiberglass on one side above the waterline is all blistered up and burned, and on the inside as well, it blew right off the wood. So it's stripping it off, cleaning it up, reglassing it. And the hard part will be the inside where there's thwarts and everything. And the question is, should I take the thwarts out and do it properly, or should I cut around the thwarts with fiberglass to try to make that smooth? I'd rather go to sea and die in my boat than die in the hospital. I'd rather die at home in my bed, but that may not be an option. If I'm too sick and stupid to take care of myself, send me away. Just like the natives used to do, put you out in the ice flow and let you die of hypothermia. That's probably the best way to go. Have nice ice hallucinations and just go to sleep. Anyway, that's the way a sailor ought to die. Hypothermia. So, in our story here, Jesus is come to Lazarus, come to Bethany, has heard that Lazarus is dying. Lazarus is sick. They send him word. And that this family, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, are some of Jesus' best friends. And he stays with them quite often when he's there, depending on which gospel you read. He's only there a couple of times, maybe, or he's there quite a few times. It's only 2 miles from Jerusalem, a little less than that. So he had just come from Jerusalem after having healed a man born blind. And they say, who could do this? Blasphemy. And they want to stone him. Of course, the high priests and the head of the religious establishment wanted to kill him, wanted to get him out of the way because he was causing a lot of trouble, talking about being the king of the Jews, being a whole new regime, with he being the head. Almost like an insurrection against the Romans was what they thought. And the Romans might have thought that too. It's expedient, the high priest says, for one man to die instead of the whole nation to be wiped out by the Romans. That makes sense, right? So what do you do? Is it expedient for one man to die because that will save our skins? Or do we take the chance that we stick with him? Now, it wouldn't have hurt anybody to stick with him because he was not talking about an insurrection against Rome. He was talking about an insurrection against the status quo. He was saying, instead of feeling worried about death, I am life. I am the resurrection. It doesn't matter whether you did live or die. If you believe that, if you believe in me, then you will never die spiritually. You'll never die spiritually. So it's our choice. It's their choice. It was their choice. It's our choice too. He says it to us too. When we die with him, we will live with him in his resurrection. The life he talks about is not the bios, the life that we live now. It's Zoe Ionios, life in the new eon. In the new eon, life in something that we can't measure, something that is impossible for the scientists or the rationalists or the logical positivists to understand. And they dismiss it out of hand. When I was studying at Oxford, the logical positives at that point wiped out the word to be, the noun, the verb to be. So anything that had conjugates of to be in it didn't count. And that's almost everything we do, we are, has that to do with